My sister forged my signature on a $340,000 inheritance check, vanished to Mexico with her boyfriend, and left me holding a stack of bills I didn't owe. And I would have lost everything if my 16-year-old niece hadn't quietly slid a folder across the kitchen table and said, "Aunt, I've been tracking her for 3 weeks." Have you ever trusted someone so completely that the betrayal didn't even register at first? Like your brain just refused to accept the data? Drop a comment and tell me where you're listening from and what time it is there. I genuinely want to know who's in this community with me. My name is Nell. I'm 31 years old, and I am a licensed estate attorney in Columbus, Ohio. I know how wills work. I know how probate works. I know every single trap that exists in inheritance law, and I know exactly how people exploit grieving families when their guard is down. I wrote a paper on it in law school. I have sat across from clients who cried telling me it happened to them. I thought I was immune. I was not. My mother passed away 14 months ago from pancreatic cancer. She was 63. She was fast and funny, and she made the best biscuits I've ever tasted, and she used to call me every Sunday morning at 9 a.m. sharp whether I answered or not. I still reach for my phone on Sunday mornings. I probably always will. She left behind a house in Westerville, a modest investment account, a small life insurance policy, and very specific instructions. The estate was valued at roughly $410,000 total. She wanted it split equally between and me, Folster's sister. That was it. That was the plan. Clean, simple, legal. I was the executor. I don't say that to brag. I say that because my mother chose me for a reason. She knew my sister. I'll call her by what she is, which is the person who raised me half the time when our mother worked nights, and also the person who borrowed $6,000 from me 4 years ago and still hasn't paid it back. My mother loved her. I loved her. But my mother also looked at me once, very seriously, maybe 6 months before she got sick, and said, "Nell, if something happens to me, don't let your sister touch the paperwork." I thought she was being dramatic. I smiled and said, "Mom, nothing's going to happen to you." She was right. I was wrong. The estate took 8 months to settle. During that time, I handled every single piece of it. The probate filing, the appraisals, the tax documents, the sale of the house. My sister showed up to exactly 1 meeting, spent most of it asking how long it would take, and left early to pick up her boyfriend from the airport. Her boyfriend, who I will call by the name that describes him precisely, which is a 44-year-old man who has never held a job for more than 2 years, and who my sister has been funding since they met on a cruise in 2019. The house sold in February. That was when I made my mistake. I was in the middle of a complicated case at work, a contested will with 5 siblings and a beach house in Florida, and I was sleeping 4 hours a night. The final disbursement check was ready. $338,500 after fees, split 2 ways. My firm handled the processing. I had a paralegal I trusted completely, a woman named Gretchen who had worked with me for 3 years, and I asked her to prepare both checks for signature. What I didn't know, what I had no reason to know, was that my sister had called the office twice in the previous week while I was in depositions. She had introduced herself as my co-executor. She was not my co-executor. She was simply a beneficiary. But Gretchen was newer than I remembered. I had let 2 people go during a rough quarter and rehired, and she had not verified the title. My sister walked into my office on a Tuesday afternoon when I was in court. She told the front desk she was there to sign estate documents on my behalf. She signed my name on the disbursement authorization. She walked out with a redirected wire transfer confirmation for the full $338,500 sent to a joint account I had never seen. By Thursday, she and her boyfriend were in Cancun. I found out on a Friday. I was reviewing the file for a follow-up matter and the numbers didn't line up. I pulled the disbursement log. I saw the wire confirmation. I saw the timestamp. I saw my signature that was not my signature. I sat at my desk for a long moment. The office was quiet. The cleaning crew had already come through. The overhead lights were on that automated dim setting they switched to at 7 p.m. I did not cry. I want to be honest about that. I'm someone who cries at commercials and at other people's good news, but in that moment I felt nothing except a very cold, very specific kind of clarity. The same feeling I get when I see exactly what someone has done wrong in a legal document. The kind of feeling that is not emotional at all. It is computational. She forged my signature. She impersonated me to a staff member. She committed wire fraud. She stole $169,250 that was mine, and she also, by redirecting the full transfer, stole the $169,250 that was hers through an unauthorized mechanism, which meant the entire instrument was fraudulent. She didn't just take my half. She poisoned the whole transaction. I picked up my phone. I was going to call her. I stopped. I set the phone face down on my desk and I thought about what my mother said. And then I thought about my niece. My niece is my sister's daughter from her first marriage. She's 16. Her name is the only thing in this story that I genuinely want to protect. So I'll just call her by what she is to me, which is the smartest person in any room she walks into and the kid I have taken to every college campus visit in a 3-state radius because her mother can't be bothered. She lives with my sister, but she spent more weekends at my apartment than I can count. She's applied early decision to Northwestern for pre-law. She is going to be extraordinary. She had already texted me. The message was waiting when I flipped my phone over. Aunt Nell, I need to show you something. Can I come over tonight? She arrived at 8:15 with a backpack and a folder that was held together with 3 rubber bands and a binder clip. She sat down at my kitchen table, pulled out the folder, and slid it across to me without saying anything. I opened it. It was 37 pages. She had started the folder 3 weeks earlier. She had noticed, she told me, that her mother had been taking calls in the back bedroom with the door closed, which was unusual. She had noticed her mother's boyfriend researching flights on a shared laptop they used for streaming. She had noticed her mother asking questions about wire transfers at dinner. Casual questions, framed like curiosity, and she had recognized what they were because she has been listening to me talk about estate law since she was 12 years old. She didn't know exactly what her mother was planning, but she knew something was wrong. So she started keeping records. The folder contained screenshots of the flight research. It contained a photograph she had taken, with her phone, of a handwritten note her mother had left on the kitchen counter, the name of a bank and a routing number, neither of which I recognized. It contained a printed copy of my sister's Google search history from the shared laptop. How to redirect a state wire transfer. What is a disbursement authorization? How to sign on behalf of executor. She looked at me across the table. I didn't know if you'd need it, she said. But I thought you should have it. I looked at my niece and I thought, your mother made one enormous miscalculation, and it was underestimating you. I told her to go sleep in the guest room. I told her she was safe. And then I went to my home office and I started working. The first call I made was to the Ohio State Bar Association ethics line. The second was to a colleague who specializes in white-collar criminal defense. Not because I needed a defense attorney, but because I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with before I moved. The third call was to the fraud department of the wire transfer institution at 9 a.m. the next morning when they opened. The wire had been sent to a joint account at a credit union in Georgia that my sister had opened 6 weeks earlier. The account was in her name and her boyfriend's name. The fraud investigator I spoke to, a man named Carl who had clearly seen everything, told me that because I had documented evidence of forgery and impersonation, and because the transfer was flagged as potentially fraudulent within 5 business days, there was a strong basis for a hold and reversal. Strong basis, I said. Strong basis, he confirmed. Don't make any contact with the account holder. I said I understood. I did not make contact. What I did instead was file a police report in Franklin County for forgery and identity theft. I filed a complaint with the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center for wire fraud. Any transfer over $10,000 crosses into federal territory, and $338,500 crosses it very clearly. I contacted the State Bar's disciplinary office to report the impersonation of an attorney, and I called a friend who clerks for a federal judge and asked her, off the record, what the typical timeline looked like for asset freezes in cases like this. She said, Nell, if you have what you're describing, they move fast. They moved fast. My sister had been in Cancun for 11 days when her debit card stopped working at a resort restaurant. She called me from the table. I know this because I still have the voicemail. Her voice was the voice of someone who has never in their life experienced a consequence. Nell, something is wrong with the account. There must be a banking error. Can you call someone? I can't reach anyone here because the time zones are different and I need this sorted out. Tonight we have a dinner reservation. I listened to that voicemail 3 times. Then I saved it to 2 separate cloud backups. I didn't call her back. What happened next I know partly from the police report and partly from what my niece found when she logged into the shared streaming account and saw that someone had left a browser tab open on the resort's public Wi-Fi network. My sister's boyfriend tried to use a secondary card at the hotel gift shop the following morning. Declined. He tried a third card. A credit card he had opened 2 months earlier, likely in anticipation of this trip at the hotel bar. Declined. That card had been flagged as part of a related fraud inquiry. He went to the front desk. He told them there had been a banking error and asked them to hold their room on a promise of payment within 24 hours. The hotel's fraud policy did not permit that. They were asked to check out by 11 a.m. My sister called me 6 more times that day. She texted me 23 times. I read every single one. I saved every single one. I did not respond to a single one. On day 13, she called from a different number. I picked up, Nell. Her voice was completely different. The entitlement was gone. What was underneath it was not remorse. I want to be clear about that. What was underneath it was fear. Nell, there are federal agents involved. Someone is saying I committed wire fraud. This is a misunderstanding. You need to fix this, I said, very calmly. I'm not able to discuss an active investigation with you. You should contact an attorney, she said. I am your sister. I said, I know, and I hung up. My niece was sitting at the kitchen table when I came out of my bedroom. She had a bowl of cereal, and she was doing her AP history reading. She looked up at me. Was that her? Yes. She nodded and went back to her reading. The federal investigation moved through stages I was not always privy to, but my contact at the FBI field office kept me informed at the points where I was a direct victim and a witness. My sister and her boyfriend flew back to the United States 22 days after they left. They had no choice. They had no money. They landed at Columbus International Airport at 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. Federal agents were at the gate. My sister was charged with wire fraud, forgery of a legal instrument, and identity theft. The identity theft charge because she had impersonated a licensed attorney, which carries additional weight in Ohio. Her boyfriend was charged as a co-conspirator. The wire fraud charge alone carries a federal sentence of up to 20 years. The asset freeze had prevented them from spending the full amount, but they had moved approximately $31,000 before the freeze went into effect. That money was largely gone. The remainder, over $307,000, was held and eventually returned to the estate account after the criminal proceedings were initiated. Her attorney called me twice asking if I would consider not cooperating with the prosecution. I am an attorney. I know exactly what I said in response. During the investigation, the folder my niece had put together became evidence. The search history screenshots, the routing number photograph, all of it. The federal prosecutor who called to interview me asked, 3 separate times, how a 16-year-old had thought to document everything in that level of detail 3 weeks before the fraud occurred. I said, she's going to Northwestern in the fall. On a full scholarship, he said, I believe it. My sister's case is still moving through the court system as I'm telling you this. Her attorney has entered a not guilty plea, which is her right. The evidence against her is, in my professional assessment, extremely substantial. Her boyfriend accepted a plea deal. His cooperation is part of the prosecution's case. My father, who has been largely absent from my life since I was 8, who showed up to my mother's funeral and stayed for the reception long enough to ask about the will, called me after the arrest. He said my sister had always had a hard life, and I needed to remember she was family. I said, I'll keep that in mind. I haven't spoken to him since. Here's the thing that I keep coming back to. My sister knew what she was doing was wrong. She researched it. She planned it. She waited until I was overwhelmed and distracted, and she executed it with precision. She didn't do this in a moment of desperation or confusion. She did it deliberately, and she took our mother's inheritance. Money our mother worked for and saved and specifically set aside for both of us, and she turned it into a vacation fund, and she thought I wouldn't notice. Or she thought I would notice and be too heartbroken to act. Or she thought I would notice, act, and eventually let it go because she's my sister and family is family. She was wrong about all 3. My niece moved in with me in September. It was her choice and her mother was in no position to contest it. She has her own room now with a desk big enough for 3 monitors because she is, among her many other qualities, extremely serious about her study setup. She starts at Northwestern in 11 months. I have already blocked off the weekend to drive her up and help her move in. I sit on my balcony some evenings and I watch the Columbus skyline and I think about what my mother said. Don't let your sister touch the paperwork. She wasn't being dramatic. She was being precise. She had spent 63 years watching my sister move through the world. And she knew, in the way that mothers know things they can't quite say out loud, that given the right circumstances and the right amount of money, her older daughter would make a choice she couldn't come back from. I didn't listen in time, but I built a life that had the tools to respond. My niece built a folder. That's the thing about the people who actually show up for you. They don't wait to be asked. They just quietly start keeping records because they love you and they're paying attention, and they know that when things fall apart, you're going to need the evidence. I learned the hard way that blood is not a contract, it is not a promise, and it is not a pass. The people who deserve your loyalty are the ones who earn it every day with their choices and their consistency and their quiet, unasked for protection. If you're somewhere in this right now, if you're the one who keeps showing up for people who are already calculating how to use you, I want you to hear this clearly. You are allowed to stop. You are allowed to protect yourself. And you are allowed to let the law do exactly what it was designed to do. Like this video, if you believe that protecting yourself is not betrayal. Subscribe to Maiden's Vendetta for more stories about women who stopped waiting to be saved, and leave a comment telling me where you're listening from. I read every single one. You deserve to be the one who walks away standing.